Today we're taking stencil making to a whole new level. I'm going to show you how to create this peacock stencil from 3 layered sheets. No tabs. You'll have to wait until the end to see the results. But I'll tell you right now, I'm calling it a success. Hi, I'm Christine, the artist behind Darlyssa Designs, and I'm happy you're here. Welcome. Okay, I think I figured out a big issue. So today I'm going to make another stencil using this, and instead of trying to create the tabs to keep all of this in, I'm going to create a stencil, a 2-layered stencil. So I'm going to tape this to my surface. Now, if you need to, and I cleaned my glass ahead of time because there was paint all over it, if you need to move this around, you're going to tape it to something that you can turn or twist. My table's not big enough to be able to do that, so I'm just going to have to do it like this. And then I'm going to tape this glass down to my table because I don't want it to move at all. So we're secure there. And then I've cut down a sheet of Mylar. This is 10 millimeter. And I did order, oh no, this is 6 mil, I believe. It's very thin. Now, I did order a larger, not larger, a thicker Mylar because I want to try. I did get some, but it's not see-through. And while that will be fine to use in some less detailed stencils, I don't know how well it's going to work on, being able to see through. I'll play around with that. I'll come back to you. I do want a thicker Mylar. However, this thinner Mylar that I've been using and linking in my description, I prefer this on things that are rounded because it's easier to kind of mold to your surface. So like if you're doing jars or something like that, this works better than the thicker stuff because the thicker stuff wants to stand up and stay straight when you're trying to bend it around angles. Okay, so I got my wood burning tool with the soldering tip. You do the best you can. So I'm going to take this pen and I'm going to look at the largest pieces. So I am not going to, see, this takes a lot of thought. Okay, so I'm going to start with the outside edges and I'm just going to do these large pieces here. Anything that is the larger section. So this is going to be on the second sheet because if I were to cut this out now and then I cut the larger piece out, I either have to create a tab, which makes things really confusing, or I'm going to lose the whole piece and I don't want to lose the whole piece. So I'm going to go through and first choose these. Now, I'm not going to do these with the larger pieces, even though they're separate, just because when I go back and do all the little ones, I can do these in between and they're not as close to these that we're cutting out. Therefore, my stencil will be a little bit more stable. So that's the thought process behind that. And we'll see how it goes. Remember, all of these are experiments. So I had one person mention that she would like to see a more organized version of, now I think because these large pieces are so close to these, I think I'll cut this on the first round. And so the reason I'm putting these dots is because if it doesn't have a dot on it, we're not going to cut it out. Yeah, I had somebody mention that she'd like to see an more organized presentation. Yep, that will be great when I am a little more organized. I appreciate the comment. I feel ya. I agree. But these are experiments. So now I've separated this and these from the things in the middle that might make my stencil weak. So on the next one, we'll do this and this piece, if that makes sense. But I'm trying to think of this section right here. So should I do this all together? I think I'm going to go ahead and do these pieces with the larger ones, because when I come back and cut these, I don't want these to be too close because that's not going to be very stable. And now this is all going to be better when I'm going to separate the legs, and I'm going to put the legs here. I'll cut this one out in this one and cut this out in the next one, therefore separating these pieces. That's my thought process. It may not be organized, but all of these are experiments, and hopefully, you know, we'll learn as we go. And I think, are these separate pieces here? So I'm going to cut the little nostrils on this one. Now, I might have to erase that when I get to it because it's such a small piece. So we have this. Let's start. And I'm going to start from down here because I'm not going to film the entire thing because it takes quite a while. I'm moving this because I want to zoom in to what I'm working on. So I'm going to start down here because I can reach it easier, and then I can pick up my whole table and put it in another spot where I have a little bit easier time. So you're just going to come in and all those little sections that we marked, you're just going to go in with the soldering tool and trace it out. Now, I have filters in my room. I'm only doing a couple of these right now on the camera. A lot of times I'll either put a VOC filter next to me. I don't know how toxic this is. I don't smell any fumes at all. So we're just going to ignore the inside because the next one we're going to cut will be the second layer. So when I lay this down, it will stencil these larger pieces, and then we'll lay the second stencil on top to get that. Or you could go the other way and use it as a mask, but you know what? That's going a little too ahead of what we're doing right now, and I don't want to confuse everyone because when I confuse you, I'm also very confused. These are the kind of projects that you just need to do. Unfortunately, the Mylar is fairly inexpensive, so you've got really a lot of room to mess around and make mistakes. And I am currently working on playing around with different things that you can use as stencils. So like if you work in an office and there's some plastic dividers that are used in offices a lot, those can be used. However, I have tried a few other things, food packaging and stuff like that, that you definitely do not want to use because they smell highly toxic. And I don't want anyone to get hurt. So as with all of my experiments and my projects, you do your research, make your own decisions. I'm willing to make a lot of mistakes, but I do try and make sure that when I try things like this, I have the proper ventilation. And if it's a nice day outside, which it's summer here in Florida and feels like Africa, it's really hot. So I don't want to go outside, but sometimes I'll set up a table, and even though this doesn't smell, I don't know if there's fumes coming from this. So anyway, you see what I'm doing here, and I will come back when I'm close to finished, but you can see I need to go get here's an X-Acto knife. So you can do this very carefully and just pull this up. And there you go. You've got the first part of your stencil. Okay, I think I got all the pieces. Now you want to go back in and check and kind of touch each one because there's always, I missed this one before. There's always one that you missed. And I added something, I added these. And another thing I'd like to mention, depending on how thick your glass is, you're going to have a little bit of a shadow. You could kind of see it here. You really have to look through the glass at the outline and pick where you're going to go because each angle is going to look a little bit different. And the best thing that you could do to make your stencil come out really nice is to pay attention to how close the tip of the tool actually is to the piece next to it, if that makes sense. And if it doesn't, you'll understand it once you start trying these out. Now I'm going to go ahead and start removing these pieces while it's still taped down. because if I need to go back in and do something that I've forgotten, everything will still be lined up properly. And also, if you need to, you can. So let me see if I can find one that's stuck. So this one's stuck a little bit. You can either come in with the X-Acto knife and trim it, or you can very lightly, just barely touch it with the tool and it'll come loose. Okay, remember when I said this is an experiment? First, I had to cut out a whole section of video where I was cutting these because my microphone wasn't working and it was really bad. So fast forward, I finished cutting all these out, and I think what I'm going to do, and oh, here's another thing I realized. There are 2 pieces in here. So this may turn out to be a 3-part. Now, there's ways around that because you don't have to do all the pieces. You can go back in and add this little piece, later. But the point is, making the stencil saves a lot of time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back through and this is going to go right through. I've already taken these pieces of the Mylar out, as you can see. But I'm going to go back in because I don't want to take my stencil up. I'm going to go back in and just put a little mark on the pieces. Now I did the little nose, but I can't get the point in there. I don't have to do all of these, but there, I will. Because I know that I've already cut these out. And just to make it a little easier to see, I'm going to put a little mark so I can see where I have not taken pieces out. You can see it. It just makes it easier to see. So I'm going to go back through and do the next. Now I'm just going to cut this piece out here, and then we'll worry about these pieces, whether you want to just leave it and go back in and add some of the details at the end, or if you want to make a 3rd stencil so that you can have the whole thing be a stencil, if that makes sense. I also mentioned, so I'm going to go back in and do the big pieces, just ignoring that, and there may be a piece here or there that I realize along the way. So for instance, these I didn't mark originally, but then I realized that I didn't want all these cut out in one, so I went ahead and did those. Okay, I got the 2nd layer done, and now I'm going to go back and do, I think all I have left to do now is just the nose, the beak, and what else? There was one more thing that I needed to go do. Oh, these pieces in here, the little black things that you see I did. Oops, I missed one. So you see I just did the inside, and then here's the larger layer, and then this will go on top of this, and then you'll have the inside piece. See that? And now we're going to do the piece inside there. I know, I realize this is a lot of pieces, but this is going to be a really cool stencil that I can use over and over again for a long time. I have stencils that I've made years ago that I still use, and I just put them in a binder in pockets. So now if I can remember to, let me slide my whole, see how I have this on a piece that the whole thing can slide, so I don't have to mess this up. So if you have something like that, and if you have a really large Lazy Susan, those things are great. Now you can kind of edit this as you go. These smaller ones, you're probably not going to get all of these. Maybe sometimes I'm surprised by the details that come out. But in some cases, you do have to edit your design a little bit. I was thinking before that maybe I should have these available. So if you don't have something like this yourself, or you want this exact same one, I have one of a side view too, and it's beautiful. Different than the ones I did in my previous videos. I will eventually figure out how to find some time to put these out there for you. Just have to get into my website, and I would like to start collecting emails of those of you who want to know when I put something new out. And there you go. I'm going to keep working on this. This is the third layer, which I didn't realize we were going to do, but we're doing it. The last one is done, I think. I hope I'm not going to take this off and find out that I missed something, but it can be lined up. It's just a pain in the neck to do, and you don't want to do it you don't want to have to do it if you don't have to, but it looks like I got everything. These are all the tiny little pieces. And remember, these things, you know, look at your shapes inside your stencils, because sometimes you can use them for other things. But now we're going to test the stencil out and see how well it worked. I'm so excited for this. I'm going to use one of these face sponges. These things are great. I'm going to put this on my in the description. My daughter uses these. They come in a pack and they're super flat until you get them wet, and then they turn into these great sponges for your face. And then she was throwing them away, and there's so many of them in a pack. Look, it got a little bit bigger, if you can tell. I just washed them out, and I have a whole stack of them in here. So I'll link those because these are great little art room tools. Okay, oh, that's what that was. I didn't have my glasses on, and I'm trying to get that off. That's the little nose, the little nostrils. Okay, so I'm not sure if I like that on there, but again, some of these tiny little details you can just draw in with your pen or your paintbrush after. Okay, because I go all over the place and I don't want to mess up where the stencil is. I want them to be lined up just right. I am going to take the extra little step to put some tape down. Okay, I'm going to do a little bit of this blue. It's really dark. I don't know if I should do this the other way. I was going to do teal, but you know what? We're just checking to see if this, maybe I should go from light to dark. Let's do that. Okay, I'm going to go on the other side, and I'm going to take some light blue, and I'm just going to go, of course his feet would not be blue, but this is just testing it out. Did I already get it underneath? I probably did. We'll do this in a video where I pay attention to the stencil. We're just checking to be sure that this is gonna, oh, some of that dark blue is coming through. That's actually kind of cool. We're just making sure that it worked. So, may not be the best stencil application, but already I'm thinking there's some cool texture that we could intentionally do. I like these sponges. Okay, so now we'll be able to see where we cut. I don't even know. Oh, yep, it's going to go through, but I don't know if it's going to be smudgy or not. You can use a stencil brush on this too, which might work better. Okay. I know I'm testing it out, but I want it to be nice too. I want a cool result. Okay. Let's peel this back and see what happened. I'm just going to wipe this paint off my hands first. Stencil number 1. Drum roll, please. Cool, cool. Okay, let's do stencil number 2. And one of the reasons why you want to do this is to make sure that you always know which side is the top side, because if you flip it over the wrong way, it's not going to line up. And if you're like me and you don't pay attention, you might just throw it down and start stamping, and then you're going to be misaligned. So, okay, I think I got all of the little spots out. Sometimes I start stamping or stenciling, and then I realize that, oh, see what I mean? I think I either did the last one upside down, so that's what I'm talking about. That's why you number them, and you see it did nothing for me. I'm still misaligned. Okay, so I have to go back and look and be sure that that I have it labeled correctly. That's what I'm talking about. The point right now is that we got everything cut out. This blue is no joke. It's going to be hard to get in there to get those little eyes. I hope it doesn't smear. Sometimes when you get these done, you learn a little something, and you'll have to go back and adjust certain sections. Like I might have to redesign the whole eye situation if it doesn't come out well. And again, the stencil brushes work differently than sponging. But I wanted to do this because it's what I had close by, and this is just the test run, just to see where my cutouts are. You'll have to come back and see how I really use it in another video when I plan for that. One more dip. Ooh, that was a lot. I'm going to be amazed if this comes out perfectly. I don't think it will. I think a stencil brush would be better with this. So you can get in there and get the crisp lines. Okay, let's see. I want to be sure I get these edges here. This paper is not the best either. It's just regular cardstock paper, so it's kind of warping underneath, keeping me from getting a good crisp line. But let's see. Let me wash my hands off. Let's see. I'm excited. I'm thinking the eyes might have worked. If you're going to use a stencil brush, you want to be real careful with the eyes because they're going to move around a little bit. So stamping in that section might be easier. Let's see. Stencil number 2. Cool. I love it. All right. Now, stencil number 3, and I'm assuming we're going to have to do this one upside down too. Okay, I decided to go with black on this one so that you could see these little pieces. So all we're doing here is the nose. And these pieces in between. The little pieces in the middle is what I'm trying to say. Let's get a little more. I grabbed my golden paint from the tube for this, which I normally wouldn't do. However, I'm thinking that the reason that this is coming out a little better than I expected, just even though it's a trial run and I'm just checking to be sure that everything's cut, I think the thicker paint is actually working well because it's not running underneath. However, it is a little bit more difficult to get it all the way to the edges so that you get all those details. So, you know, you'll have to work with these and figure out what works best with what you have. And I'll have to play around with my paints and my stencils. And these, by the way, you could just take them in the sink, and I lay it down on the bottom of the sink and just use my sprayer, and then I lightly brush with my little, I use little nail brushes by the sink, but I have one for art, and I just use the little nail brushes to very gently brush off any paint as the water's running on it. Sometimes I don't even take the paint off. Sometimes with these thin Mylar pieces, the paint actually gives it some stability. This is very messy when you do it the way I'm doing it. You might want to wear gloves. I don't really care because I hate wearing gloves, and I don't mind my hands are covered in paint all day anyway, even if I use gloves, because that's just what I do all day. Okay, the final reveal. Please, please, please let this come out as well as the first two. Okay, are you ready? Okay, let's see. Cool, I love it. Now, I know it's really hard for you to see the black in there. Let me take this off and show you close up. How cool is that? Now, like I said, of course, I mean, I kind of really like this. You could go in with a pen and outline this if you wanted to. It's not too bad, but I do want to play around with different techniques to see if I can get this to be cleaner. But the stencil's all good. Anything that's not, this is just the way I did it with the sponge, and not paying too close attention because, you know, just to test it out. But I think this is a pretty successful attempt at a 3-layer, no tab stencil. Now, of course, I have to go and figure out which is the right way and line them up right again. I started off, I put the number 1 on the wrong side. Did I? It doesn't seem that I did. I don't know what I did. I'll figure it out, but hopefully you won't make the same mistake I did. That's a simple mistake to fix. So I'm going to call this a success. Let me know in the comments if you plan to try this. And I would love to know from those of you who watched the first stencil videos, how you like this one. Am I improving? Is this better? Would you rather put tabs in, or does this seem a lot easier? As always, everything that I used here, I will put the link in the description below. And I will see you all on Monday for Masterboard Monday. Thanks for watching.